now we're gonna get some smoke in our eyes.
Yeah. So what kind is this one?
This is it's called Four Roses,
Four Roses.
and it's their small batch.
Okay.
Um, but it's a really mellow type of whiskey.
Okay.
It doesn't have that bite at the end,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Okay.
But it's probably my second favorite type of whiskey right now. What do you think?
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's my first favorite is 1835. It's a Texas whiskey,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure where this one's from, but I like. Oh, this is Kentucky. Okay. But I like mixing this one. The other day I mixed it with apple cider.
Okay.
It was amazing.
Nice. And you don't like ice?
It depends. This one I like it a little more. Well, I like it neat. Especially if I'm like I can sip on this for a long time. And if I
Gotcha.
have ice, I feel like it really mellows it out, and it's already got that mellow flavor to it. So
Okay.
yeah.
Maybe I should have tried mine without.
Your
It's
second
all right.
glass.
It's all right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so the whole idea of what I'm trying to get started here is pretty much people like you that have inspired me a lot in life. I want to be able to highlight you guys, like Richard, you, a few other guys that I have in mind.
Yeah.
You guys, like every single day, just think about y'all, and like, from the very beginning, we just kind of had that connection, and I really appreciate y'all for
Absolutely.
just giving me advice in general, and being there for me, and allowing me to be vulnerable with you guys. I know the first time we ever went out for lunch, I was extremely vulnerable with you.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and it means the world to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you definitely impacted my life in a very positive way when all of that was going on.
Little smoke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just really appreciate you, and thank you from the bottom of my heart.
I appreciate those words. It's so being a teacher. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've tried to leave the profession.
Mhm.
It's crossed my mind a lot, and it's like, well, what's the point?
Mhm.
So it's like I could say that this is honestly like I don't even know the words for it. It's a great honor just to know that you would continue to keep in contact with me.
Mhm.
Let me know what's going on in your life, and let me know that I've had an impact. I know that a lot of teachers feel like, these kids, they don't care at all.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see after so many years that I really did make an impact
Mhm.
in the classroom, on the soccer field, whatever the case may be. And I wish more teachers had the opportunity to hear from former students like this, and just to see, you said you were vulnerable, and it's really cool that I can have, be a part of that, share that with you.
Mhm.
One of my closest friends he's 26 as well.
Mhm.
And he's actually a teacher that works right next door to me. He was my student teacher about 5 years ago.
Mhm.
And so, he's told me what a mentor I've been to him.
Yeah.
And so again, that's just like it's probably one of the best compliments that somebody can receive,
Yeah. For sure.
So just to be able to have that impact on another person's life, like that's at the end of the day, it's not about, for me anyways, in middle school science, if you know that a proton is positive, but
Mhm.
that I had an impact on your life, and that's something that you can carry forward.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, I love science. So I remember your class specifically. I just loved being there, and I mean, I was also a knucklehead. I'm not gonna say I was a freaking superstar student or whatever, but I had a few of my buddies there in that class with me, so we were always goofing around doing dumb stuff. But instead of like getting onto us, you connected with us, because you were 27, right, at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I mean, even now you're still really young. Uh, so just the way that you would connect with us, we would kind of all get in line, just regularly. We didn't want to continue goofing around or whatever.
Yeah.
And so like science for me, I mean, I love science. I've always loved science. If I could, go back and and like choose what I wanted to do in college and stuff, I would definitely go the science route. Just follow my heart and do something with like astronomy or something like that.
Yeah, for sure.
And I remember your class. I really enjoyed it because you would teach us those things. I remember one time you gave us a prompt. I remember this prompt because you said, I want you to talk about, or I want you to describe where you are right now. And some people were like, oh, well, I'm sitting in a class or whatever. And when you asked that question, I immediately started thinking of like the cosmos and like how we're on this floating rock, we're just like, I like immediately zoomed out, right, to like the bigger picture. And I was like super proud of that little paragraph that I wrote, and I showed it to you, and you looked at me and you were like, it's very deep, very deep. And you were like, I love it. And I just felt really proud at that moment because I was like, oh, this guy, he digs me. Like, he knows what's up.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So, yeah.
I remember, so I'm trying to think back to, I can remember specifically a few of you in that class. I remember where you sat, too.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of sat, I had my table was in a line like this, kind of parallel with one another, and then some, if I'm not mistaken. And I think we're going to have to take a break maybe and grab some cover.
I think we should be fine.
Okay.
As long as it doesn't get too hard,
Yeah. If nothing else, I've got a canopy that we can put up.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I think we'll be all right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But yeah, I remember specifically, and I think his name was David.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember
David
you two
Herrera.
sat next. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that you two cheated on a test together. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that specifically, but
so I remember that, and I was like, because both of you were on the soccer team.
Yeah.
And it happened during the soccer season.
Okay.
And I remember, I can't let this go. What am I going to do? So I remember having, I think I had a conference with your mom and dad.
Oh, okay.
Or they showed up. Yeah, and I said, all right, your punishment is you're going to have to retake the test at another time. But the highest I would give you, even if you got 100, the highest I was going to give you was a passing grade of a 70.
Yeah.
And then I think I sat you out for the first half of the next game. But I was like, man, because from what I can remember, you were one of the superstars on the team.
Yeah, I would like to think so. I do remember, however, in high school, I was, Coach Fernandez.
Yeah.
He was also the Spanish teacher, and I was not. I mean, I can speak Spanish, but I'm not educated in Spanish, right? And I should have taken it way more serious so I could actually understand my own language and speak it properly. But I'm like, dude, I don't even speak English properly. So, so I cheated on a test for Spanish, and he caught me.
And you got caught.
The same thing happened. It was during soccer season.
You're not very good at cheating.
Yeah, I'm not very good at cheating. I always get caught.
That's funny. Yeah.
So, one thing that I do want to ask. So, what I learned about you was you're Christian. Is that correct?
I am.
Yeah. And I remember when we went out to lunch, you told me that that you taught Sunday school, but that you taught it in a way where, like, you would include science into it and talk about how
Yeah.
science kind of proved the Bible, I guess. Um, I'm not very educated on the Bible, so like, or even in Christianity, I just have like a base knowledge. So like, what are some of the things that you use to like intertwine both science and that religion, and like what makes you kind of believe what you believe, using both.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I guess just to kind of go back my background, um, I grew up in the church.
Okay.
Uh, so actually, my parents divorced when I think I was 2 years old. Um, and then my sisters lived with my mom, and I lived with my dad. But then my dad and we both lived with my grandparents. And so my grandparents were really involved in the church, and so they took me all the time. So um, my faith, I really attribute that to them. And so so I've always believed that God existed, right? Or exist. And so as I got older, then of course, you start to learn things on your own or begin to develop your own thoughts and ideas about things.
Right.
And so as I got older, I had to really think about things, and so I felt like I was borrowing their faith, right? So I had to make it my own.
Right.
And I feel like I grew a lot when I went to college. So I had some really close friends. There was a core group of us, and we all grew up in church. So that was amazing to have that support system. I got to college. I went to college actually with my best friend growing up. We were best friends since kindergarten. And we ended up being college roommates together.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it was amazing. And so immediately, actually, when my parents were helping me move in, my dad came in and handed me this little business card, I guess, that advertised this church on campus. And he was like, "Here, I figured you'd want to know about this group, being here on your own." So I got really involved. I was involved in that in my entire college education. And then
This was what college?
I went to Bowling Green State University in Northern Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I felt like I grew a lot there. And then I moved here. It took me a while to find a church that I really wanted to get into. I didn't have that core group of guys anymore to kind of keep me accountable. So my church experience moving down here was kind of off and on. And then I got married, and, my wife and I talked about it, and I said, I really want this to be a important part of our lives. And so we'd gotten connected into a great church with a great group of friends. And then eventually one of the guys asked me to start teaching a class. So we had started teaching, little kids. Then I helped out with the youth group for a while. And then they asked if I would co-teach a Sunday school class with another guy, and then also host a home Bible study. And so as that happened, man, it really tested my faith. It really made me grow. I had to read a lot more than what I was normally.
Were you a teacher already in the classroom?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So as soon as I moved here, now it's been 18 years now. I moved here specifically for the teaching job.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you started at Aldine?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I actually started at Hambrick Middle School. I was
okay.
there for 4 years. Then they were opening up Lewis, and so I moved over there for 2 years, and then I went to Grantham, where I've been ever since.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I guess making a long story even longer, to answer your question, as I've taught science, I realized that there is a lot of stuff that's being taught in the classroom that really kind of went against my faith.
Mhm.
And so as I'm teaching, then I'm really starting to make connections. And it's like, okay, well, scientists are saying that the universe has existed for, billions of years or whatever the number is now
Mhm.
that they say, which is inconsistent all the time, it seems. And that the earth is, millions of years old. Um, and that dinosaurs walked the earth, and then a meteor hit and
Mhm.
destroyed them. And as I'm reading the Bible and as I'm teaching these classes, I realize there's some inconsistencies that I feel like a lot of Christians don't even realize.
Mhm.
And so that led me into apologetics, which is, so the word apology is to give an account for, not to say I'm sorry, but to give an account, to give a reason for your thinking. So as I began to study apologetics, um, it really kind of says that science and Christianity, they're not separate. They actually complement one another very well.
Mhm.
And so I actually took a course through Biola University and to get a certificate in apologetics. And so that's really where I began my journey on figuring out how science and my faith meet.
Okay.
Um,
So you started teaching science first,
yes.
uh, but you already had your faith. So what made you want to teach science?
So I actually, when I went to college, I didn't have any desire to become a teacher.
Okay.
Um, I started off as a marine biology major, and in northern Ohio there are no oceans nearby.
Mhm.
So I took a couple of classes. I researched it more and more and realized that a lot of it includes working in labs and things. And what I realized is I was just a shark nut. I loved sharks. I was obsessed with them. So I figured, that's probably not something I want to pursue full time. Maybe one day I'll swim with sharks, whatever the case may be. Um, but my best friend that I went to school with, he was actually in the education program.
Hmm.
So my first year, actually, I just explored different ideas,
Mhm.
um, different career paths. I took, um, biology. I took pre-med classes. I took some business, accounting, finance, and realized that I was more into science than anything else. And then my buddy was like, you know what, just take this education class with me. And I'm thinking, okay, whatever. I took it and I fell in love with it. So then as I reflected back, trying to figure out what it is that I wanted to pursue, I realized that I was always working with kids.
Mhm.
Um, Growing up in my youth group, I would always help out and volunteer with the little kids. We would do puppet shows and all kinds of crazy things. Then in school, I would go back as a high schooler. I would go back to the elementaries and I would I would read books to the kids and I would tutor.
Mhm.
Um, so then I took the class and everything just kind of clicked.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's kind of where I decided that I was going to go the education route.
Mhm.
I tried it elementary. I knew I didn't want to do high school. Um, I tried elementary, realized that wasn't for me. Volunteered at a middle school, loved it. So that was the route that I had to take.
Mhm.
But within middle school education, I had to choose two areas. And so I chose history and science. And um, as I went through the courses through the rest of my college education, uh, I was drawn more to science than anything else.
Mhm.
So that's how I came into science. And again, yes, I had my faith, um, but never really felt that the two connected. I didn't see that connection
Mhm.
until I started teaching Sunday school class.
Okay. So how do you realize that? How did you realize that, science complemented your faith rather than battled against it?
Yeah. So, and I think one of the big aha moments was we were talking about dinosaurs and just how, they roamed around on Earth, millions of years before people, and then the meteor wiped them out. They, were extinct. And then man came along later through the process of evolution.
Do you believe that, or
I don't.
no?
I don't.
Okay.
No. And so the whole thing with dinosaurs, the aha moment was we were actually, my buddy and I, we were preparing to teach through the book of Genesis, the first book of the Bible, which goes into, the first words are "in the beginning, God."
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got in the beginning, the beginning of time, God. Well, God did something. He started something, right? And so then it goes through the process of creation. And so you've got the first 6 days where God is creating, and then the seventh day he rests, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you have all of these. You've got the earth forming, you've got the water, the separation, light, night and day. Then you have the birds in the sky, the fish in the seas, and then you've got land animals, and then you've got people, right? Death didn't, according to the Bible, death did not exist until Adam and Eve, the first people, sinned, right? That's when death existed or came into being. So then I'm thinking, okay, well, we're saying that dinosaurs were wiped out millions of years before people.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible says the dinosaurs were created that same creation week that people were. And nothing died until death existed. Smoke's getting my eyes now.
Yeah.
Until Adam and Eve sinned, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was a conflict. So I feel like my belief is that the Bible is 100% true. If you've got this sovereign God who's in control of it all and can create the universe and everything that he says he did in his Bible, well, then, of course, he can have a written document, the Bible, that is 100% true, right? So I was like, okay, as a believer and as a science teacher, there's some conflicts.
Mm-hmm.
Let me search it a little deeper. And so I found as I go along that there really are no conflicts in what I believe about science and my belief in some, let me say that. There are conflicts, right? But there's explanations. So we're all here, right?
Mm-hmm.
We exist. The question is how? Did some supreme being create us, God, or was it through another process like evolution? And so you've got to figure that out. And it was really cool. One year I had a conversation with some students because we were talking about things. And one thing I asked them, they said, we're people, but we evolved. We came, went through this process over millions and millions of years. And then, so one of them had, I don't remember what was on the table, but I said, would you believe that whatever that object, let's call it let's call it a book, okay? Do you believe that over time that book just came into existence, but it was dust particles or whatever else before,
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, no. Okay, well, why not? Well, because you can see that there are words that have been printed on it, pictures that have been printed on it.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, you have evidence of a designer,
Mm-hmm.
of a creator, right? So that book is a pretty simple thing, right? But if you look at the human body, very complex, way more complex than that book. But yet people say that over time you had goo, bacteria, primordial soup, whatever you want to call it, right? That all came together and has evolved over time into something more and more complex.
Mm-hmm.
I can't buy into that. You know, if you can't say that that book or a computer or a watch or a phone did not just come into being over time, the human body, which is more complex than all of that put together, how can you say that that just came into being over time?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's kind of where I'm at as far as where we came from, evolution or a supreme being, right?
Mhm.
They both take faith. It's just where you're putting your faith at.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing I've learned uh, as I'm getting older is even science. It's you're still putting your faith into it, right?
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, whether your faith is in Christianity, Buddhism, science, or you're an atheist, you're still believing in something.
Absolutely.
You still have faith in something, which is why I think it's important for us to coexist with each
Absolutely.
other, right?
Yep.
Because everyone's going to believe something a little bit different, right? Um, so what I'm really interested in, I feel like there's definitely been some points in my life where I'm like, oh, there has to be a God, like somebody's looking out for me,
Mhm.
something's there, what like has my back or whatever. Then there's other times that I'm like, dude, I don't know, So I feel like I haven't made up my mind, and I want to get more educated on more religions, and even science within itself. I want to be more educated. Um, I feel like I can't. I feel like I'm more agnostic because I can't. Because I'm a very like hard evidence type of guy.
Right.
Where
Right.
it's like I need to see it and then I'll be able to like believe it 100%, right?
Yeah.
But obviously, even in science, there's some things that we just can't explain. There's things that like the light spectrum. X-rays are like it's on the spectrum, but we can't see it, right?
Right.
Like right now, if our eyes process different type of light, you could see totally different. Maybe we could see in the night or in pitch black or whatever.
Yep.
But because of our physical limitations, and what we have accessibility to, we see this right now, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of science that can't be explained, which is also me then questioning science, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's really healthy to question everything, right? Um, and what I've been really interested in is like lost civilizations. Like, what do you think about that? Like, um, there's a lot of scriptures and like artwork and like evidence to a certain extent of like civilizations that were maybe not human or from Earth, um, or even lost civilizations. Like with the pyramids. Nobody can really explain how those were there with such precision and like all the pyramids in Mexico. Like every single one of those pyramids has something to do with the stars and the alignments of the star. Like it's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something that I've never really looked into,
Hmm.
which I think is pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
So I will say, like, as far as beings outside of this earth, uh, I guess I would say that I'm more of a skeptic when it comes to that,
Hmm.
and only because there's nothing about it in the Bible necessarily. I mean,
Okay.
to my knowledge, right? Um, I will say that a lot of, because you're right, in a lot of these pictures that they find in caves or wherever, um, there's this idea that something else is out there, right?
Hmm.
UFOs, aliens, whatever you want to call it. My thing is, because in the Bible it talks about how there's a lot of interaction with humans and angels, right?
Yeah.
So, and again, I haven't really put much thought into it or really researched it, but immediately I think about that, what is it? What kind of interaction was it?
Mm-hmm.
And could it have been supernatural, angels interacting with people?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And as far as the pyramids and things go, yeah, a lot of that is very mysterious, and we think. I think another area where we kind of get it wrong is we think, okay, because evolution is taking place and everything's getting better and better, that civilizations before us were not as intelligent.
Right.
And so, two things. One, I don't think that things got better or more complex because of the law of thermodynamics, or the law of entropy, which means that things are decaying, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, the law of conservation of mass says that matter cannot be created nor destroyed, only transformed, but it becomes unusable. So, like, right now we have wood and we've applied fire to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that matter still exists. The law of conservation of mass says it cannot be created, cannot be destroyed. So what are we doing? We're burning it, right? But it's being transformed. What's it being transformed into? Well, we see smoke.
Mm-hmm.
You can feel the heat. You can see the light. And there's a pile of ash beginning to form, right? So it
Right.
just transforms into what
Yeah.
it is. But things aren't getting better. So if you go to the stars, think of the sun, which is made of hydrogen,
Mm-hmm.
and as it goes through nuclear fusion, it transforms into helium, and the byproduct is heat and light energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, it's transforming, but we can't get that energy back into a usable form necessarily. That log is not going to be in a usable form ever again.
Yeah.
So to say that things are getting better, well, what we see in science is that things aren't getting better; they're actually decaying. We grow and then we begin to decay. We die, right?
Yeah.
But going back to civilization, if God created Adam and Eve, right? He's not going to create Adam and Eve caveman style, where there's no intellect. Probably the most intelligent two people ever on Earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you've got these civilizations that, yeah, they didn't have an iPhone or electricity probably like we have today, but they were probably way superior to us as far as intellect, and just think
Yeah.
of all the things that they were able to do and create with the limited tools that they had.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And even like spiritually, I would assume that they were way more spiritually connected with nature, with their own groups, their own tribes or their own peoples. Like that's
yeah.
something that we in this modern world are missing a lot, is that spirituality, and not like some sort of like hippie thing or whatever, but more of like just being connected with each other.
Yeah. So as far as like community goes and family,
Mm-hmm.
they were. So my buddy put it like this. He says you would not live in your own house like we do now. We're very isolated from one another.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can go weeks without talking to specific people,
Mm-hmm.
and you could probably go days without interacting with. I mean, I think of the neighbors that I have around me, and I can go days without seeing certain ones or even talking to them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not how it was for them.
Yeah.
They lived in, I would assume, probably pretty close quarters.
Yeah.
And then a lot of it was, you would have extended family living together.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely.
Yeah. You were saying that like the log is burning, turning into ash and all that. I saw this like theory or something. I think it's on Netflix. Forgot what it's called, but I saw a clip of it on TikTok where they put an apple in a box. The box is vacuum sealed. The apple then starts to decay, and it, eventually hundreds of years pass by or whatever, and it's just like dust or whatever.
Yeah.
And then another thousands and thousands and thousands of years pass by, and according to, I don't know what law, but according to the law of whatever in science, it eventually, after thousands and thousands of years, turns back into that apple. And to me, I don't know. That was very. It was. It doesn't sound accurate, you know. I
Right.
feel like at one point, if thousands and thousands of years have gone by, shouldn't the box eventually start to decay or something? Like,
Exactly. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
what, how is? I don't know. It was very. To me, it was like cheesy and like not accurate at all.
Yeah.
But the guy explaining it sounded accurate. You know, he just sounded like he knew what he was talking about. So it was just funny. I was thinking about that right now.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, one of the things that I'm really interested in is, um, I guess, like aliens and like other world um, intelligence and stuff like that. Because I mean, there's like the government right now that they're releasing. You know, we don't know if it's true at the end of the day. Like they might just be doing all this to, you know, try to trick us or whatever. Who knows, right? You don't know the exact truth. But from what I've seen, like the pilots and people that have encountered these things, you know, it seems very very compelling and very very like they're very honest,
Yeah.
right? And so it just sparks those thoughts of like, damn, what if this is true? You know, what if there's things that we can't even keep track of with all this high tech cameras and you know all these sort of things. Uh, and what you were saying is like, it's not necessarily getting better. It's just evolution, right? It's it's decaying, right? According to science, right? We're getting older. We eventually die or whatever. Um, there's some proof, I guess, or like evidence that suggests that you know, people that like built the pyramids or whatever, they were more intelligent than us in different ways. Obviously, they didn't have access to laptops or we don't even know that. You know, they might have, but then there's but then it got to a certain point, and then some like supernatural or not supernatural, some natural event, um, like what is it called, the cataclysmic or whatever event happened that completely wiped out that specific group
Hmm.
at the time, right? And uh, there's evidence that that has happened a few times throughout human history, right? Where like they're advancing, and then something happens that completely wipes them out, and then we start from zero again. Then they're advancing, happens all over again.
Yeah.
Uh, do you? I mean, I would now say that you don't really believe in that, right?
Yeah. So I think that there are groups of people
Hmm.
that their their time comes to an end. So I mean, you have, biblically speaking, you have, different groups like the Babylonians, you have the Romans, the Assyrians, the Persians, and you have all of these groups of people. And the Bible even says that they're going to exist and they're going to rule and reign over Israel specifically,
Hmm.
but only for a certain amount of time. And then God's going to restore Israel back. And so that's, you have these groups of people that their kingdoms are very powerful, and then there is a fall.
Yeah, because
And
what
then you
goes
have
up
a
must come down.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you have, these new people in power that come
Hmm.
in and take over. So you see that, but the cool thing is, uh, and so that information is also outside of the Bible, right? So we have historical books that say that these groups of people existed and reigned. Um, so you've got what's called secular historical documents that tell us this, but then it's also noted in the Bible. But there's one group that has remained since the beginning,
Mm.
and that's Israel. And in the Bible, it says that that's God's chosen people, and you know God will punish them when they turn away, right? So you have uh, Israel existing, and then they are conquered by these nations, because they were disobedient to God.
Mhm.
They were worshiping other gods, false idols. And so God punished them by having these other groups of people conquer them. But the Bible also says that there's going to be punishment for those who conquer,
Mhm.
and dominate over Israel. And so eventually they fall, right? And exist no more. And so, but it's fascinating just because you've got this group of people that are conquered time and time again that still exist today. And if you've been paying attention to what's happening in the news, I mean,
Yeah.
there's always conflict with them.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the Holocaust, right? You had Hitler that tried to wipe all of the Jews out.
Mhm.
And yet, while unfortunately many of them died, right? They weren't wiped out.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
still exist.
Yeah.
And now you've got conflict. But the thing is, the Bible says that they are God's chosen people and
Mhm.
that he is going to restore them.
Mhm.
So one group that has existed since the beginning of time, and
Mhm.
that's Israel, which is kind of fascinating.
Yeah, I never thought about that. That is really fascinating. Um, are are you familiar with Kendrick Lamar? He's a rapper.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I know the name.
yeah. In some of his songs, he's one of my favorite rappers because when he makes rap music, he talks about real stuff, right? And he has a very he's a very good storyteller. And so in his music, apart from like the pop, like radio music, if you listen to his albums, he has a lot of stuff about God and
Mhm.
Jesus, and along with Kanye, he's got. I mean, you know who Kanye is.
Yeah.
He's got a gospel album called Jesus is King. It's one of my favorite albums.
Yeah.
Every time I listen to that album, I just feel like some sort of like energy. And holy crap, like anytime I'm feeling like depressed or like just like I need some sort of direction, or like I need something to like really be there for me, and I don't want to bother someone, and I don't want to go to my parents and tell them how I'm feeling or whatever. I start to listen to Kanye. I start to listen to, specifically that album. Kid Cudi, he's got some songs with Kanye where it's about God and about Jesus, and a lot of those songs they talk about how God does things for a reason, right? He isolates you so you could become a great man, or he brings sadness so that way you can appreciate happiness, or whatever the case may be. It's always for a reason. Um, but going back to Kendrick, he's got at the end of one of his songs where he's got a I don't know who it is exactly, but he's talking about like the Israelites and how they are God's chosen people, and how his speech talks about how like black people and Hispanic and Latinos are a part of the Israelites that are also God's chosen people. And thought I've always like just listened to it and then I think about it for a little bit, but then I never go and like research and like get educated on what exactly he's talking about.
Yeah.
But it is interesting
Mhm.
that, especially now that you're saying that, it's really interesting.
Yeah. So at one point you had said that sometimes you believe that there's a God, and other times you're not quite sure.
Mhm.
Um, can you kind of talk me through that a little bit? Like, when were those times that you felt like you believed in God? And then what happened? What was the situation where you're kind of like, I'm not so sure about this?
Mhm. Um, so I remember. Let's start in my childhood. I remember going to church with my grandma all the time, and it was very early on that I knew that my dad. I didn't know that my dad was atheist, but I knew that he didn't necessarily believe in Christianity how the rest of my family believed. Um, and my family, I would say that they were uh, Christian and very. Some of them are very in tune with it, and they go to church all the time and stuff. And my grandma was a part of that. And when I was younger, I would go with her and with my aunts and stuff. And so I felt really connected. But then my dad reminded me that I needed to have an open mind, right? He was like, don't just. He wasn't trying to like, uh, I guess like manipulate me or even tell me what to do. He was just reminding me to be open minded, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because there's thousands of religions, and I was like, whoa, what do you mean thousands? Like, and I remember he brought out this book. It was called Religions of the World. It was a huge book, super thick, and it had all these sorts of pictures and paragraphs, and it gave you like a rundown of so many different religions. And I opened that book and I start reading, and I start to realize that there's Buddhists and there's all these different religions or whatever. And so when at the same time, uh, I was feeling, I was in this weird state where I would I would say it was like some sort of depression because there was a lot of things going on in Mexico where with the cartels and all that type of stuff, and all that stuff was getting uploaded to the internet.
Yeah.
And me being a boy, I would go and look up all these videos and stuff, and I would see people getting their heads chopped off, see people getting tortured. It was like on the internet, like just readily available for me to just watch
Yeah,
all that
yeah.
stuff. So I started getting really bad nightmares, and I started thinking about death a lot. And it got to the point to where that was the first time I ever felt anxiety, and I would wake up in the mornings and just start immediately crying. I would wake up in the middle of the night crying.
Yeah.
So it'd be hard for me to even go to sleep. Throughout the entire day, all I could think about was just like, what's gonna happen when I die, and it was scary because I didn't want to one day lose someone from my family, because I never lost someone until 3 years ago, and I lost my grandma.
Mm-hmm.
That was very close to me, right? um, so I would wake up every single day, and all I could think about was his death, and I was so scared of dying, so scared of like my family getting separated. My parents, it got to the point to where they wanted to take me to the hospital, and I remember my grandma took me to my aunt's house, where my aunt and her husband are very religious, and I think he's a priest or something, um, and they told me that I needed to get closer to God and stuff, and I remember that saved me at that moment, because I was like, okay, everything's gonna be okay.
Mm-hmm.
God has me. He's got my back. Uh, if I put my faith into God, when I die, I'll get into heaven, right? So quickly things got better, but I was still really young, and so I think this happens a lot where like people go through something and then they immediately turn to God and they're like, please, like I know I haven't been the best,
Yeah.
I know I don't deserve it, but just please bless me with some quick.
Get me out of this
Get
situation.
rich,
Yeah.
yeah. A quick $1,000 so I could feel better, right? Um, and that has happened to me several times now throughout my life, where I'll do something dumb, some stupid, and I don't deserve any grace at all, and I just think to myself, and I guess I guess it would be called praying, um, and I just ask God for forgiveness and for for a way out, right?
Yeah.
And I always promise that like I'm gonna um, put my entire faith, right? And it's very like you don't appreciate something until it's taken away from you, right? Um, so I've had to experience these things because of my own stupidity, because of my own wrongdoings, to where then I look to God, and it seems like like God's always saving me, and then I try to remind myself of what a blessing, I just received, and how I feel like I don't deserve it, and for some reason something saved me, right?
Right.
And the, I think one of my struggles, I think my biggest struggle actually is just like feeling like I don't deserve a lot of these things. Um, I think about almost every day. I think about just the fact that I don't like even deserve to be here, or at least I feel that way. Um, I feel like I've ruined relationships in the past because of my own stupidity, and I'm like, man, I didn't deserve that, right? Um, I've always had to learn to appreciate things once they've been taken away, and the good thing right now is that I'm realizing that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm trying to make everything count now. You
Yeah.
know, I have a really good friend. Um, he's a professional motorcycle racer, and one night we were talking, and uh, he told me that he was kind of the same way, where he didn't really appreciate things until his dad passed away. When his dad passed away, he made a commitment to never take anyone for granted again, right? And I think my grandma passing away has definitely made me realize that as well, that I can't take people for granted, right? I've been trying and working really hard on just like leading with love, and like living with love, right? Because I mean, even right now, I can drive home and everything would just be taken away from me, right?
Absolutely.
Um, and I think it's just difficult for me to see it in the present moment, and then I'll just stray away from it real quick, and then before I know it, I've lost whatever's in my hands, and then I'm like, damn, I should have appreciated that, right? Um, and I mean, even like sitting here right now talking about this, it's just like I feel like I don't deserve to be here. I feel I feel a lot of shame within myself, and I think it's really hard to live that way because it's really hard to like even like look at my parents in the eyes, because I know that they're proud of me, even though they know that I've done stupid things, and I've could have been better, and I could have finished college or whatever. Um, so like I live with that shame, and I live with the shame of like ruining relationships with these girls, and ruining friendships with guys and people around me, ruining friendships with those people, and just like doing dumb things. Like I carry so much weight with myself that like I've brought it upon myself, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and so a lot of times when I'm alone, I just try to thank, God for. I'm like, I'm like, for whatever your plan is, like it it must mean something, you know, like I must be here for a reason. There has to be a reason
Yeah.
why I'm here, and I really need to figure that out before it's too late, you know, before he's like in that movie Pursuit of Happiness with Will
Yeah.
Smith, where at the very end, Jaden, he says a joke. He's like, there was a guy that was drowning in the ocean, and a boat comes by. He's like, hey, we'll save you or whatever, and the guy's like, no thanks, God will save me. And another boat comes by, they're trying to save him. He's like, no thanks, God will save me. And a third boat comes by, tries to save him, and he's like, no thanks, God will save me. And then he dies, and he gets in front of God, and he's like, God, why didn't you save me? And he goes, I did, you big dummy. I sent you 3 boats. So I'm always thinking, like, one day he's not going to send another fucking boat, you know? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I don't know. Like, I know this about myself, and I don't know. Like, I don't know how to explain it.
So I think it's, well, first of all, you're not alone in that, right? We're people, we're humans, we're messy, we mess up all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, your mess ups aren't all behind you. There's still plenty of mess ups that you're gonna make
Yeah.
in life. But the guilt and the shame, I mean, that's normal if you have a conscience, right? There are people that don't, and I guess you can consider them kind of messed up people, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's perfectly normal. And one thing that you've got to learn is that you've got to learn to forgive yourself, right?
Yeah.
You know, specifically with the relationships that you've messed up in the past. It happens. I mean, we've all messed up relationships. But you take something from that. You take what you've learned from it, and you grow. I mean, that's how we become better people, right?
Mm-hmm.
You make dumb mistakes when you're younger. For example, you're probably not going to cheat anymore on test, right?
Well, no.
but the thing, yeah. So yes, you've made some dumb decisions. We all have. Yes, you feel guilty and ashamed about some of them. We all do. But you've got to say, okay, I'm not going to let that define me, and I'm not going to let it run my life. And I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to grow from it, and I'm going to be a better a person because of it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you continue to make the same mistakes, then that's a cause for concern. But you've already said that you're trying to lead with love, and I love how you said that. I love that phrase. I think where you are right now at the age of 26, man, you're further ahead probably than most people with your outlook on things and saying, you know what, I'm not gonna continue to live like that. I think you're a deep thinker, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And especially, you know, from my perspective of my belief and faith, and there are going to be people that don't agree with me, but I think that you do have purpose, and that God created you for a very specific reason. And the number one reason, in my belief, that we're created is for fellowship with God, right? That deep, intimate relationship with God. And you said that you don't feel like you deserve to be here or to be saved from whatever it was that you thought and prayed about. Well, the reality is none of us deserve it, right? So my thoughts, my belief is, you know, we all sin, right? Adam and Eve sinned first, and as a result, we're kind of cursed because of it. And some people might be tempted to say, well, you know what, I wouldn't have done that. Well, you're a liar because we all would have. Just think about, you know, the smallest little things that we've done. I mean, if somebody were to, and I've heard this from somewhere, but to project our thoughts on a screen for everybody to see, we would just crumble and melt right there, right?
Yeah.
So the reality is none of us deserve it, but that's the beauty of it. God's love for us is so great that even though we don't deserve it,
Mm-hmm.
he provided a way, right?
Mm-hmm.
in Christianity, our thoughts and beliefs are, because we have sinned, we've fallen short of the glory of God. And because of that, we deserve a penalty. We deserve punishment, right? So another way to look at this, and again, this is something that I've heard a pastor say, that if you were to go into a court where there is a judge getting ready to sentence somebody who murdered somebody that you love and care about, right? And the judge says, you know what? Nah, I'm loving, I'm kind. Therefore, I'm going to say, I'm going to pardon you. I'm just going to let you go. You would not feel that that's right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to our faith, my faith, our faith in God, God is saying just that. Hey, look, I'm going to pardon you from what it is that I should punish you. Well, how can he do that? Well, because somebody came and took that punishment for us. That'd be like somebody going and saying to that judge, hey, I know that this guy committed the crime, but I'm going to take the consequence. I'm going to suffer those consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Punish me instead. And that's what Jesus did for us, right? He says, I will take that punishment. And so we are pardoned. So what's the caveat? Well, we have to put our faith in that, right? Mm-hmm. That, yes, I know that I am guilty before this all-powerful, holy God that is pure, right? I don't deserve it. There's nothing that I can do. There's no amount of certain living. There's no amount of gift giving or kindness or love that I can show to another person that would say, okay, now I've earned it. God gave his son in our place as a substitute. He was seen as guilty, and his righteousness was given to us. So we're pardoned. We're seen as not guilty. Mm-hmm. But we don't deserve it, is my point in all of that.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, we can change our perception on that, and instead of saying, oh, I don't deserve it, and feel guilt and shame and bad about it, we can have pure joy in our lives. Because, yes, we don't deserve it, but it's there anyways because of God's great love for us. So that's just another perspective on it.
Mm-hmm. I think I struggle with believing in that because I'm like, what about the people that live their entire life up to 50, 60 years old just doing horrible things, and then they realize that they're 60, and then they turn to God and they're like, please forgive me. And then from 60 to 80, they are really good Christians. You know, like for 60 years you were messing people up, messing up relationships, you know, doing all these horrible things, committing all these crimes, treating people horribly. But then you can still get into heaven because at least for the last 10 years, you turned your faith onto me.
Yeah. So, and that's tough,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I do want to emphasize again, like it's not about them turning their faith to them and then living a good life. It's about them turning their faith to him. Because again, there's no amount of good living. There is no good living. We're flawed, right? So our best living is, and the Bible says it's as filthy rags in his eyes, because he is such a pure and holy being, right? That even the smallest little tiniest lie is a great sin against a perfect and holy God, right?
I mean, like you right now, you're drinking whiskey. Isn't that a sin?
So in the Bible, it talks about people drinking wine and things like that.
Oh, okay. I thought
the Bible says, "Do not become drunk on wine."
Oh, okay.
And honestly, alcohol is a big topic
Mhm.
in religion and Christianity. There are those that say you can't have even an ounce
Yeah.
to drink. Um, and I would say, if you're convicted by that, then don't drink.
Mhm.
Um, I drink freely because I'm not getting drunk on it. Uh, I do it as a social activity. You and
Mhm.
I are sitting here now. I'm sipping on it. Um, if I were in a situation, and the Apostle Paul even says this, he's free to do what he wants, but there are some things that he doesn't do because it could cause another brother to stumble. So, for example, there was a guy that I know who struggled with alcohol,
Mhm.
and there would be times that I would drink around him, but then I realized, this is something that causes an issue in his life.
Yeah.
So while I could probably do it, uh, I, I I stopped because I didn't want that to become a problem with him.
Mhm.
Um, and so the thing is, it's like, okay, well, is alcohol, should you not have it at all? Should you only have a little bit? Um, there are all kinds of things that people will sit there and point out and say, well, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do that. Well, to them, I say, again, my good works, there are no good works, right? So
Mhm.
I can throw all of this out, but it's still not going to be good enough for me to say, hey, I threw all of that out, therefore I have earned my spot in heaven. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I
Um,
see.
but yeah, that's definitely one of those things where people make a case.
Mhm.
But yeah.
I was telling you about Burna Boy.
Hmm.
I want to go see him. He's got this line in one of his songs that I absolutely love. He says, the title of the song is "I Told Them," because he talks about like he told everyone that he was gonna make it. Right? He told everyone he was gonna rule the world, and nobody believed him. Right? And so he's talking about that, and then he says, um, "I knew I was a born winner, humble because I'm a born sinner." And that's kind of how I feel. Like, along with all this baggage that I carry every day, where I have all this guilt and shame and some sort of depression back there, where all this anxiety and stuff, where it makes it really tough a lot of the days, to even just get through that day. I still feel like I do have a purpose, and I still feel like one day I'm gonna get there. You know, um, I know I'll get there. I know for a fact that one day I'm gonna think back to all of these feelings and realize how, like, I wasted a lot of energy that I could have channeled into showing more love, showing more compassion, being happier with myself. Because a lot of that energy I'm channeling into the shame and the guilt. You know.
If you don't mind me asking, like,
Hmm.
I know that you do the whole biking thing.
Yeah,
Um, I guess really, what got you into that?
yeah.
Have you always been into that, or?
I was always into biking, and like BMX style biking, like doing jumps and doing tricks and stuff. But I never had a proper BMX or a proper mountain bike. It was always a Walmart one,
Mhm.
and those were obviously really crappy bikes. And so I would always break them, and they would get messed up or whatever, and then my parents would get tired of buying me a new one. But at the same time, I was also really focused on soccer and baseball and track. So I couldn't do everything, even though I wanted to do everything. Um, so as I got older, I think when I was, how old was I? I must have been like 18 or 19. Um, I bought a real BMX, and I've always loved the feeling of just being on a bike. So when I got that one, I immediately got into like building it and customizing it and just like swapping out parts and all that type of stuff. And like I could afford it now, And so I got really into that with a buddy of mine here in Houston, and we started doing these huge social rides in downtown, like Critical Mass. It's the last Friday of every month. There's like 2,000, 3,000 bikers out there, and it's basically like to bring awareness to bikes right out on the roads. Um, but this was before COVID, and it was insane. Like there was police escorts, and
Yeah.
it was huge. Like if you were in downtown one of those nights and you were in your car, you were at a light for, I don't know, I'm assuming like 45 minutes
Yeah.
because we would shut everything down, right? So I loved it. Excuse me. And then I moved to Austin, um, and in Austin I started looking for a group to ride with that was the same. But I continued riding my BMX by myself and stuff. Um, and I met this one group called Social Cycling Austin, and it was kind of the same, but Austin's smaller, and the cycling community is very they're very clicky.
Mm.
So it's not, you don't get the 3,000 bikes, right, that you would get here in Houston. Um, so we would go. It'd still be, like 400 people, I would say, 400 bikes. And in a smaller city, obviously, it felt similar, very similar. Um, so I was doing that for a while. I started meeting people, and I met this one guy. His name's Jay. Uh, he got me into working at Austin Bike Farm, which is a bike shop. Before that, actually, I remember I was on YouTube, and I was just like looking at bike videos and stuff, and I saw this guy from New York. He goes by D Blocks. They did like a little amateur documentary on him or whatever, and he does the wheelies and stuff, and he's the king of it. Like he's, everybody knows who D Blocks is, and so I was so interested, and I was showing my girlfriend at the time, and I was like, man, look, this is what I want to do. Like this is freaking cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I fell in love all over again with the whole thing, and I immediately put in my head like I'm gonna get a bike just like that, and I'm gonna learn how to do wheelies just like that, and I'm gonna be the one around this Austin just doing, I want to become the best at this, just exactly how he is in New York. And I shit you not, like 4 days later, I'm at the skate park on a super cold night, and I'm just messing around on my BMX, and out of nowhere, I see D Blocks pulling up.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
All the way
and
from New York.
yeah,
That's
and
awesome.
I see him. I remember I see him, and I look at my girlfriend, and I'm like, and I run up to her. I'm like, this is D Blocks, the guy that we just saw like freaking 4 days ago. She was like, really? Like that is him? And I'm like, no, that's him. That's literally him. Like, what the hell? And he was by himself, and he pulls up right next to me, and he's just like looking or whatever, and I'm like, dude, aren't you D Blocks? And he's like, yeah, I'm D Blocks. And he's like, let me see your bike. And he gets my bike and he starts doing tricks on it and stuff. And I'm just like sitting there like, what the hell? Like, what is going on? And out of nowhere, I see a whole bunch of bikes. It must have been like 150 bikes or whatever. They were doing a huge like social ride for D Blocks because they found out that he was coming. And Bike Farm ended up throwing a party that night for him, and they did like a whole ride or whatever. So I'm like, dude, what are you doing here? And he's like, oh, I'm just riding around the city or whatever, with these guys. And that's when I met Jay, and I'm like, I didn't even say anything to him. He just told me, he was like, follow us, and we were in my girlfriend's car. And I was like, I'm going to go ride with them. And she's like, yeah. She was always so supportive.
Yeah.
And so she was like, yeah, go. And then I take off, and then I'm like, wait, no, I can't. Like, I think I was like too tired or something. And I run over there, and I'm like, hey, where are you guys going? and Jay was like, Austin Bike Farm, we're having a party, come on. And they all left. And so I throw my bike on the rack and I'm like, let's go, let's go. So we drive over there. I didn't even know what the hell Austin Bike Farm was, and Googled it, and we got there and stuff. And then I walk in. There's all these weirdos, having fun, and it was just a huge party. And I met this one guy. His name was Carly. And I'm like, hey, what's going on? He's like, hey, what's up, man? My name's Carly, and we're just throwing a party for D Blocks. Just come out and get something to eat or whatever. I think they had food there and drinks there. So I get there, and then like I didn't know anybody, so I wasn't really like feeling it. So I'm like, nah, I don't belong here. So I left. And very next day, it's Sunday. I think it was Sunday. Or no, it was Saturday. No, it was on a Sunday night because I was cooking some food, and I was about to do my homework for Monday, and then I see D Blocks is live on Instagram, and I click on it, and at the time I was living with my girlfriend right next to the UT campus on one of the main streets called Guadalupe Street, and I see D Blocks online, and I recognize the background. He's on his bike. He's like, "What's up, y'all?" He's like, "I'm in Austin, Texas, or whatever." And I see the background. It's on Guadalupe Street, and I'm like, "Oh crap, he's right down the street." So I see him getting closer and closer to my apartment. So I go to my window and I look out, and I could see him over there on his phone, like out on the sidewalk. And then I see him stop in real life, and then like 3 seconds later, he's like, "Hey, look, that's where I bought the Game Boy yesterday." And right under our apartments, there was a video game store. So he puts his phone away, puts it in his pocket, and the live ends. And I'm just looking at him, and he crosses the street and goes right under my apartment. And so I'm like, oh, crap. So I turn off the stove. I run down there, and I open the door, and he sees me. He's like, oh, what's up, man? And he's like, where's your bike? And I'm like, dude, I live up here. Like, my bike's upstairs. Yeah. I'm like, dude, I was just watching you on live, and I live right here. Like, I had to come down and say what's up. And he's like, oh, yeah. Get your bike. Let's go ride. So I run upstairs, grab my bike real quick, and my homework was right there. The food was still on the stove. And I call my girlfriend. I'm like, hey, I left the food there. D Blocks, I told her everything. I'm like, D Blocks told me to go ride with him, so I have to go ride with him. And she's like, yeah, go for it. So I start riding with D Blocks, and he's like, record me. And so I start recording him, and he just starts hitting these insane wheelies through traffic. He's like running on the bus on the side, like with his legs up, running on the bus. And he's like standing on his pegs with like one hand, and he's like screaming and stuff, and I'm just like, what in the hell is going on? And I'm recording him, and then we get to where he was going, which is with a different group called Captex Cruisers. And I show up. This group, they only ride single speed bikes that are BMX or cruiser style bikes that are 24, 26, or 29 inch. And those are the only bikes allowed. And so I show up, and I'm on my 20-inch BMX because it's a freestyle BMX. And the guys all there thought that I was D Block's friend, and because we showed up together. And so everybody's like, oh, this is D Blocks. He's coming from New York or whatever. And there was maybe like, I don't know, like 15 guys there. And so they start riding. They come up to me. They're like, what's your name? I'm like, oh, Jose or whatever. He's like, yeah, we usually don't let these types of bikes ride with us, but since you're D Block's friend, we're going to let you ride. I'm like, oh, thanks. And, I just kind of played along. So I'm riding with him. And before I know it, it's like 8 or 9 p.m. And I'm like, oh, shit, I need to do homework. And so I take off without telling anybody. And I go home, do homework and stuff. And then a couple days later, I realized that Captex Cruisers, I ride with them now. And that's where I met, a lot of the guys that I hang out with every day and that ride with me. And the leader, his name is Willie. And he's everybody has different opinions about this guy. Yeah. He's always been cool to me, except for a few times, So we like kind of go back and forth with that. But I respect him. I respect everything that he does. it's his crew, his rules, and like some people just don't get it. They're like, why does he not allow, and I'm like, well, it's his crew, like he can do whatever he wants with his crew, right? It's the same exact way that I do whatever I want with my crew, which is you can do whatever you want here, right? Could ride anything that you want.
Yeah.
So I ended up riding with these guys for a while, and there's another guy who's one of my best friends now. His name is Freddie. Me and Freddie were the one of the younger ones. I mean, I was definitely the youngest by far. But he's also young, and he's got that young mentality of where he just wants to have fun, right? And he doesn't want to take it too serious. So he comes up to me. He's like, "Hey, what do you think about starting our own crew?" I'm like, "Bro, I've been thinking about that since I moved here. Like, I want to start something." And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, I think I came up with a cool name, 512 Wheelie Crew." And I'm like, "Bro, that is so dope. Like 512 Wheelie Crew, let's do this."
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, let's do it." He's like, "Let's just start posting on Instagram, and let's see what happens." And so we started doing that. Started posting, and we ended up attracting a lot of people, and it's just that was the very beginning. And it's just now I'm thinking back on it, and it's freaking amazing, like how everything just kind of fell into place. And now, like, these people have become literally a family to me.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, Fred has been there for me since day one. A lot of these guys have been there since day one, and I can't even thank them enough. There's been several times where I've thought about moving back over here, and like I told you last time, I was in my head. I need that adversity, so that way I can grow as a person, right? Because without that adversity, you don't grow as much. Without the struggle, like I'm learning to see the beauty in the struggle, right?
Yeah.
Because without the struggle, then it's not the same, right? If I just said, okay, I'm just gonna go back and play it safe and live with my parents, like, no, I'm gonna put my head down and do what I need to do to get out of this. And these guys have been there for me, and I think about all these guys, and I think about some of these women that ride with us, and my friends that are all there that have turned into a family. And like I want to be there with them, and they're a part of the reason why I'm still there.
Yeah.
And so I just, like, I can't thank these people enough. I freaking love these people.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So that's pretty much the story.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really amazing. Now, I know that you have done some stuff with, like, raising money to buy bikes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, like, how did that all come about, and is that something that you still continue to do?
Yeah, it's been really tough for us to do stuff this past year, and like I want to say, like, for like a year and a half now, we haven't really done anything because Fred, he got a new house. He had to get surgery on his knee. He had he had like his own things that he was dealing with. At the same time, I had my things. Like, I've moved, like three times now. I've lost my job. I had to move jobs twice. Just like relationships with girls, and a few other things that I've been dealing with as well. So like the money on our side hasn't been there. I don't think that's like an issue necessarily, because I know that if we reach out to a lot of people, we could raise money. But I think that like pride kind of, I mean, it definitely affects me, and I think that for Fred it's the same, where like we don't feel like we're at 100% or like near 100%, so we kind of just feel like we shouldn't really do it, right? Like right now isn't the time, because we've definitely spent a lot of money, especially Fred. He's spent a lot of money, like flying people out from like Miami, from New York, from Detroit, and just like putting on events. He spends a lot of money doing that. But we've also had help with with Bike Farm, this other shop called Clown Dog, with one of our sponsors, Pure Coco. All these people have definitely helped out a lot when it comes to these events, especially when it's stuff for like kids. Like I love doing stuff for kids. Like kids are like my favorite thing in the world. Um, and so a couple years ago, I'm gonna let this plane go by. That's pretty good. That's the first sip that I have without the ice.
Oh yeah. Do you
Yeah,
prefer with ice or without?
without. Yeah,
Yeah, it's mellow enough that I think
yeah.
that the ice is not gonna dilute it. Yeah.
Mhm. And it still has that bold like whiskey
Yeah.
feeling. Like I just feel like a man. um, but yeah, a couple years ago we had a bunch of kids that would come and ride with us, and I freaking loved every single one of them. Like I would look forward to riding with them more than anything throughout
Yeah.
the week.
Yeah.
I just like it was Wednesday night or it was Wednesday, and that's like what got me through work. Just the fact that I was about to go ride with these kids that were not only looking up to me in a way. I don't really think that they saw me as like their biggest role model or whatever, but I knew that in a way they looked up to me. So I was there for that, and I was like trying to connect with them as like also a younger person. Um, but at the same time, like they would push me as a rider because these kids, with just a few months, they got insane skills. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like the trajectory was like almost like straight up and down. Meanwhile, me, it's more like this and then
Right.
down and then right. And so they pushed me as a rider. Like all the time, like every single day, it seemed like they were learning new tricks. And me, it's like every month I would learn a new trick, right? So I really enjoyed that, and I mean, there's a few of them that still like on Instagram and stuff. They'll hit me up, like, "Hey, I hope everything's good," and they're all doing like football now and or whatever. And so I know bikes isn't the most important thing to them right now. Like girls and stuff, they're getting into those relationships and all that type of stuff. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, like I really enjoyed riding with these kids, and so there's another guy. His name is Angel. He does these on like we just did it. When was it? Last weekend. It was a toy drive. So we do a bike ride. Well, he does a bike ride. We all come together and bring unopened toys, and then he gives you a raffle ticket for every toy that you bring, and then gives away 2 bikes for that raffle. But then all the toys that he's collected, he takes them to a school where the middle school kids, they can pick out gifts to give to their younger siblings for
Oh,
Christmas.
that's awesome.
Yeah. So like every year he's like breaking the record, right? Like every year it gets bigger and bigger. And so he definitely inspired me to do stuff for kids. So like one day, Clown Dog, the owner of Clown Dog, his name is John. He hits me up. He's like, "Hey, dude, we should do like a huge party where we build bikes and we kind of teach the kids how to build a bike or whatever, and then we give these bikes away to kids." I was like, "Dude, I'm fucking down. like let's do it."
Yeah.
And so that was really fun. And then we had what else did we do? Well, I've helped out Angel like last year or the year before. I told him that I wanted to be like more hands on or whatever. I kind of helped him out with or it was last year. One of my buddies that I was playing soccer with, he's the media director. Well, I don't know if he's a media director, but he does all the media for. Have you seen the Gel Blasters?
Mm-hmm.
The guns?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that company is in Austin, and he does all the media for them.
Really?
And so yeah, and so he's super cool, dude. And I told him, I was like, hey, dude, we're doing this toy drive. My buddy's doing a toy drive. Like, I'm wondering if you guys could, like, donate a bunch of guns or whatever. Man, they donated, like, I don't know, it was like 40 guns or something like that.
That is
Those guns are
awesome.
expensive.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. My son got one, and man, I had so much fun playing with it. I
Yeah.
bought one too.
Yeah.
So we'll
And
come out here and run around and shoot one another.
Yeah, dude, those things are awesome. And so, I reached out to them, and they were like, "Yeah, you don't have to do anything. We're doing it for the kids, right?" So we just made like a little video and tagged them in it and stuff. They didn't even repost it because they didn't even care, about.
Yeah.
Or I think they did repost it, but they didn't like make a huge deal about it or anything because it's like about the kids, right? It's not about. That's the most important thing.
That is awesome.
So I've been in my own head. I've been thinking of like, because we've kind of also we haven't done any events because it takes money to like put even like just a little basic event or whatever, and like people hit me up all the time like, oh, when's the next big event or when's the next cookout or whatever, and I'm like, well, I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna eat tonight, like what I mean. And so I know Fred, he's got his things that has had to deal with, and so I don't want to like put all that pressure on him, to spend his hard-earned money on it, and then me just kind of lay back. So I've been trying to get my finances a little bit more on check, so that way I'm able to put more of a 50-50 with Fred. But at the same time, it's not difficult raising money. It's just that, like, I guess it's like me just like feeling that shame or whatever, where I'm like, well, I'm not in a good spot right now, so why am I gonna go and ask for money, right, from companies or shops or whatever?
Yeah. I'm not gonna. We've talked about this before, but like, I just wish, and I know that there's got to be a way where you can turn this into a full-time gig.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like a nonprofit of some sort, or I think that you would really thrive in that environment,
Mm-hmm.
and because I'm hearing you say all of this stuff, and you're 26 years old. I mean, you might reflect and say, I haven't done much. But I hope as you're telling these stories right now, you're realizing and seeing that you've already had a huge impact, and you've done quite a bit.
Yeah, that's a big part of the reason why I wanted to do this podcast. I think at the same time that it's helping my mental health and just like feeling better about myself because of all that I'm carrying every day. I can also like network and build better relationships with people, and I'm hoping that this like eventually I have a super nice setup. I have a studio where I'm like doing this as like full time, maybe. But at the same time, I'm like enjoying where my career is going right now, and so I'm just kind of like, I guess, letting things flourish by themselves, right? Like wherever I'm gonna go is wherever I'm supposed to go, right? Like I'm not gonna like force anything. I'm not gonna try to manipulate anything. Like I'm just gonna let things play out how they're supposed to play out. But I do want to put a lot of energy into like the podcast and a lot more energy into the crew, just like doing things for the community. I think a lot of people, I think most people that go and ride with us would be more than happy to do a lot of these things with me as well. Like I'm always thinking of ideas, to as like rides or whatever, like benefit rides and stuff like that. And I know I have a really solid group around me that would definitely be willing to put in their time and effort for a greater cause, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's next?
far as me right now, or like
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you've got a new job, which seems to be going well. Like, you've got this going, which is new.
Mhm.
Uh, you seem to be one of those who are, you're highly motivated, and you seem to be like, okay, here we go. Let's keep rolling. I mean, do you have? While yes, you're putting time and energy and effort into this, like, what's next?
I don't know. I think I think what's next is um, taking care of myself and giving myself more love and getting in tune with the person that I want to become. Um, I got out of a relationship a few months ago, and I was very conflicted whether I wanted to like try to make it work again, um, or like focus on myself, right? But what I've realized is that like I've I keep wanting to like give people or give a woman my love or time or energy, but I've never, ever since I turned, you know 18 or 19, I've never given that love to myself. And I've never like focused on myself 100%. It's always been with someone else. And I think a part of the reason why I failed in those relationships is because I wasn't the person that I want to be or that I see myself as.
Yeah.
So like if I'm not feeling that way about myself, then what am I doing trying to be a provider for someone, or like even be a man next to another woman and being like a solid man, right? um, so I think that like I have a few goals set in place for 24. Um, and I think I think that for like especially for I'm using this New Year's as like a just like a little marker, right? Like I've never really done like New Year's resolutions,
Mm-hmm.
but this year I'm definitely doing it. And those resolutions are about me, and uh just like becoming that person that I want to be, right? Um when I realized after this past relationship, when I realized that I was gonna do this, it was crazy because I remember was about to I was about to play the PlayStation, and I went on TikTok. I opened it up, and the first video was this kid talking about. Um, it's crazy because his location said Humble, Texas, which is like right down the street, right?
Yeah.
And he's like a 26-year-old, same age as me, and he's talking about first video to pop up. He says the reason why God isolates a man is so that man can become great. And I have the video saved, and I look at that video every single day. And like if God is trying to teach you patience, he's not just gonna give you patience. He's gonna put someone in place to annoy you, so you learn that
Yeah.
patience, right? And I've realized that I've never been isolated by myself, which is another reason why chose to stay in Austin. I chose to like deal with these problems that I have, these financial problems, and to like figure it out, right? Because I realized that I need that isolation in order to become what I'm supposed to become. I really need to learn how to give myself way more love. I need to learn how to take off some of this weight that I carry every single day. And my mentor, Richard, he's been helping me a lot with that.
Yeah.
I mean, you right now, you're helping me a lot with that. I have like 3 or 4 different mentors that are helping me all the time with those things. I recently started David Goggins, right? He's like super hardcore and
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Uh, I think it was on a podcast with Joe Rogan where he's talking about he came up with this thing called the accountability mirror. So his mirror in his restroom, you look at it every single morning, every single night. He wrote accountability mirror, and then he wrote like specific goals for the day, specific goals for the week or whatever, and he would make sure that he's doing those things every morning, every day, and every night, right? And so I started doing that. So you go to my restroom right now, and you see right there it says accountability mirror. I have my goals. I have shit that I need to do every day.
Yeah.
Like I want to hold myself accountable, and I even started journaling. Like I've never ever journaled, and I started journaling, and I started reading these books. I forgot his name. I think it's like Don Miguel something. It's the I know you've heard of them. The what are they? It's like the four, or I don't know if it's four, but like the steps of to living like a more peaceful life. I forgot the title of the book.
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
It's about like Toltec wisdom.
Yeah, I can
you
even
know,
picture the cover. It's got like the 4 squares with like
Yeah.
something. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I
with
know
like a
what you're talking about.
flower.
Yep.
Yeah. The four agreements or something like
Yes.
that. It's called. Yeah, and I bought the set where it's got the three. It's got like the learning how to live a more peaceful life, and then learning about relationships or whatever, and then learning how to like love yourself. I started reading that, and I started journaling after every chapter. I started journaling at when I come back from work, just like stuff that I've been thinking about and all that. And when I started seeing a therapist for the very first time, she actually had me journaling, but she was like telling me what to write, and so I was just kind of like taking notes on like things that she would tell me to pay attention to throughout the day. But like now I've started journaling by myself, which I've never done that, and like I noticed that like that's one of the things that I'm doing by myself is like paying attention to the things that I'm thinking about all the time and trying to change those constant thoughts of like shame and regret and uh, guilt. I'm trying to change those into like more positive, to like just trying to be happier with myself, just trying to like look at all the good things that I've done rather than the bad negative things or whatever. So I'm like a work in progress right now.
Well, you're always going to be a work in progress
Yeah,
till the day you die.
Yeah,
When
you're right.
when you feel like you're done progressing, then that's when it's like you should be a little worried. But yeah,
Yeah.
but I get what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that's why I look up to you guys a lot. All of my mentors. And I just think back to like all of our conversations, and I think about how you guys live. I want to become great men like y'all, or a great man
Yeah,
like y'all.
yeah, man. Yeah, so I think that's honestly, I think you are leaps and bounds from where I was when I was your age.
Really?
As far as like reflecting and trying to become a better man, just thinking about all of those things. I don't think that has really hit me until my mid-30s. I wish there's something I was reading the other day. It was like, questions to reflect on is like, what advice would you give yourself in your early 20s or whatever? And it would literally be, kind of like what we're doing right now. I honestly don't feel like I've ever had a mentor in my life. I mean, I attribute a lot of things in my life to my grandfather, who's by far the biggest influence on my life. But like, while my dad was around, he wasn't really what I would consider present in my life. And to this day, I mean, our phone calls are, few and far between. And when I got here, like I said, I didn't know anybody. Never been to Houston before in my life until the day I arrived, right? And so I've never really had that mentor in my life. I feel like I've missed out on that. So that's one of the things that I've, strived to be in the capacity as a teacher. Like I want to work with like the new teachers and things like that. And so my buddy, who was my student teacher, I really wanted to try and impart things into him, impart wisdom, to my own kids. But I honestly think that that's like one of the greatest joys in life, is to be able to share wisdom and teach and have a positive impact in the lives of others. So that's really cool that you have mentors in your life that you're looking to, and I wish that's something that I would have sought out earlier in life.
Yeah. I think that's what makes you a great mentor. It's just the fact that you never had a mentor.
Yeah. Yeah. I often think about like, and just even with teaching, because I'm the mentor coordinator on campus, so I'm in charge of all of the new teachers. But just thinking about, okay, when I first started, what did I miss out on? What was it that I was not provided? I even do the same with my kids. I just think about like, what was it that I didn't have when I was younger, growing up, that I want to make sure that my kids have. And honestly, I think that's like my greatest motivation in life, is I reflect on just my own life, and it's like, okay, what did I not have? What is it that I want? And how can I give that to, one, my kids, and two, to others around me? Anybody who will listen, So,
I think that's the case for a lot of like men, right? They like start that second life when they have children. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
And like, I don't have children, obviously, but like, I think about it a lot, where I'm like, if I did have a kid, if I did have a son, and like, how would he feel if I told him, oh, well, when I was struggling, I just quit, I gave up.
Yep.
Then what would he think, right? And so that's a part of the reason why I'm like how I am right now, because like, I want to be able to, if I ever do have a kid, to be like, dude, I've been through hell and I got out of it, and you can too, dude. Like, but I don't think I'm ready for kids.
Right. Yeah, that is definitely one of those things where it's like, if you're not there yet, don't let the pressures of society or parents put that upon you. That is definitely one thing where, one, I don't think you're ever gonna come to a point in life where you're like, I'm ready. For me, it was, okay, am I financially stable enough to where I could take care of this kid? And then obviously, do I even want kids?
Mhm.
And so, I mean, I knew from a young age that I definitely wanted kids.
Yeah.
And finally, I got to that point in my life where I had a career, I had money coming in, a steady paycheck. And it was like, okay, this is all right. I'm married now. Let's,
Mhm.
So I guess that's kind of how I realized that I was ready.
Yeah.
But I had a good, going back to my college friend, my friend since kindergarten. He called me one day, and he had been married for like 5 years or so. I don't know how many years. It was multiple years that he was, and he had said, my parents keep asking, when are you going to give us grandkids?
Yeah.
And I was like, man,
Yeah.
don't let the pressure of that. It's a big commitment.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
not like you can say, I want to return this thing.
Yeah, right.
Um,
I mean, you can, but, but like, I think abortion should be legal up until 18. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, that's like something that you can't ever, return. So my parents tell me the same thing. Well, my mom, every time I come home, or every time she knows that I'm like hanging out with some girl or whatever. She's like, I want grandkids. Every time I come home, she's like, where are my grandkids? Because I think with women, they like want that, especially mothers.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
But I'm like, when the time is right, it will happen.
Yeah.
Right. In the bigger picture, because obviously the time's never gonna be right for me. um, So like I think about that a lot also, where I'm like, dude, I can like barely even take care of myself.
Yeah.
What makes me think that I'm gonna be able to take care of a kid?
Right. Especially in the first couple of years, man. I tell you what, like the lack of sleep.
Ooh.
It just, as a matter of fact, so when I was teaching you,
You had
I had my second daughter,
a second.
who's now 13.
Wait. The first one, she's 21 right now.
Yes.
When did you have her? How old were you when you had her?
So I became an instant dad when my wife and I got married.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we got married, and then I adopted her. So she was, I want to say 6 or 7 when we got married. And then I adopted her. I think I adopted her right after Avery was born. Yeah, because Avery was with us when I remember we went and did the whole adoption process. So yeah. But yeah, when Avery was born, man, it was a nightmare for like the first 2 years as far as sleep goes.
Yeah.
We had a nightly routine where she did not want to sleep. Like we would put her in her crib. I mean, we got all kinds of advice from people. People, just let her cry it out. I mean, she would cry for hours. And it
Yeah.
was just, so finally we had a routine where I would hold her like this and just kind of bounce her. It was like 11 o'clock at night. And then I would just bounce her and she would calm down, and I would bring her to my chest. And I would hold her there, and all the meanwhile, I'm up walking around, kind of pacing back and forth. And finally, I would get to the point where I could like sit down on the couch and then kind of recline, and then she would just sleep on my chest.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, I don't know how long that was our nightly routine. And it would just, I was like, my gosh, I'm not going to survive this.
Yeah.
So it definitely is, it's a lot of work, but
Yeah.
but it's worth it when you're ready.
And then you would have to wake up pretty early to go and take care of 100 and something kids.
Yes, yeah.
Dang. And
Yeah, I look back now and I'm like, man, I couldn't do it at this age. Like I just
Yeah,
no
yeah.
energy. Thank goodness I was in my 20s.
dude, and you don't even have like gray hairs.
Well, the lighting, I guess, I've got more gray hair in my beard than I do on my head. So I keep that. Usually I keep it trimmed up. I've let it grow out since
Yeah.
we've been on vacation, but
Man, but you still look great though.
I appreciate it. Yeah, well, we're talking about resolutions. I typically don't set resolutions because I know that I'm going to fail.
Mm.
So every year I'm like, nah, I'm not doing a resolution, but I will set goals for myself. I mean, you can call them resolutions if you want, semantics, right?
Mm.
But I feel better saying that I'm gonna set goals. And one of those for this upcoming year is I wanna get back into the gym. I wanna do a little more. I mean, so I already have kind of like a somewhat of a morning routine.
Mhm.
Man, by 9, 10 o'clock, I'm done. Like I look, I'll go up to bed and I'll pass out like that.
Yeah.
But 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock, I'm wide awake.
Mhm.
I'm ready to go. And so I'll often get up. I'll come downstairs. I'll open up my computer, take care of emails or something that I want to get done. Um, that's kind of like that's my most productive time is as soon as I wake up, I'm ready. Like yesterday morning, as a matter of fact, I was up at. There have been multiple times this week that I've been up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Mhm.
And I think yesterday I got up and I had a few things that I wanted to do, just, little household projects I wanted to do. And by 8 o'clock, I think I'd already accomplished most of them. And so it was like 10:30 in the morning. And I was like, I'm ready for a nap.
Yeah.
So,
That's one of my goals as well. Is like getting back in the gym. I mean, I do so much cardio. Like I
yeah.
play with 4 soccer teams. On the days that I'm not playing soccer, I'm riding my bike. I ride for sure Wednesday nights, most Thursdays, and Sundays. Like if I'm not playing soccer, I'm riding. If I'm not riding, I'm playing soccer.
Hmm.
Right? Some days I do both. Like if I have a late soccer game, like 10 p.m. or something, I'll go ride. I'll go to work, then I'll go ride, then I'll go to my soccer game. So I do so much cardio. So like the gym, I won't really like bulk up and become all super
Yeah.
Hulk, but I've definitely I haven't been in the gym in so many years now. And so like I at least want to like get a little bit more shred,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
and like I'll just feel better about myself, right? I'll get a little bit more confidence, and I need to work on doing that routine as well. Because right now I like wake up, put some clothes on, go to work,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And when I wasn't working this past month, oh my god, I was going to bed at like 3, 4, just playing video games all night long.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, man, I cannot do this. I cannot be this way.
Yeah. Well,
Slippery slope.
yeah. Yeah. And right now, like I mean, that might work for you, right?
Or I can make it work.
Yeah. But I have to get up early if I want to get anything done. I mean, because as soon as I get to work, I mean, my day is nonstop, and then I come home, and of course, I want to be a family man, right?
Mhm.
I want to interact with my kids, and my son plays baseball, although he's now in off season. My daughter is really into martial arts, which she has that 3 times a week, and so if I'm not taking one of them to practice, I'm making dinner, for when they get back from when my wife takes them. And then it's on the entire time. And then,
Yeah.
we have our bedtime routine and just trying to interact with one another and read and do things like that. And then, like I said, because I get up so early, once they go down to bed during the school year, I'm done.
Yeah.
So I mean, so the only time if I want to work on anything like my personal goals, I have to get up at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
So I'll get up and I'll do some reading, whether that be the Bible
Mhm.
or a book that I'm reading, or kind of pursuing that goal that I have for myself. So like I enjoy the whole writing process. And so like I'll get up and I'll do some writing.
Mhm.
And then I also have some goals for this upcoming year as well, as far as that goes in business type stuff.
Yeah,
So
because you were saying that like you do writing for other people, or like?
Yeah,
Or,
yeah. So I did
okay.
some freelance writing for people, and then that would earn me some money. So I wrote for them and then they would create products out of it and sell it. And so, which is cool, like I'm getting, some money.
Mhm.
But the thing is, I'm trading time for money, right?
Mhm.
So I only get paid every time I write an article. Whereas, being a teacher, I sell lessons and things like that. And things that I've created years ago, I'm still getting some money from it. Not as much as I used to, but that's one of my goals, is to pick that back up
Yeah.
and create more so that I can sell them again and again and again. And then, over time, I will have put time in, but now I'm getting that residual income.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's a goal for me this upcoming year.
Hmm. Just getting back into that freelance writing.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So
So what other goals do you have? So you have the writing and getting back in the gym. Do you have any other ones, or?
really, right now, those are the two big ones that I
Mhm.
really want to pursue. Um, I've always had, well, so now, as far as my career goes, I have an opportunity to step out of the classroom,
Oh,
right?
okay. Yeah.
And work with teachers.
Mhm.
Um, but I recently found out within the last couple of weeks, now, they're beginning to offer incentives for teachers, as far as money goes, according to classroom evaluations and student scores. And within the last couple of weeks, I found out that I'm actually eligible for additional funds because of it.
Mm.
And so, but that only applies if I stay within the classroom.
Yeah.
So now I'm kind of conflicted. What do I do? Do I
Yeah.
step out of the classroom and pursue that? Or do I stay in the classroom and receive this money that is a teacher incentive?
Mhm.
So that's kind of where I'm at right now. But eventually, I need to focus on where I want to go career-wise. Like, I love being a teacher, but I know that I think I have a gift in leadership and mentoring and working with new teachers and just working with teachers in general, and kind of having that vision and that drive to take everybody from point A to point B.
Mhm.
Am I going to let money motivate me, or am I going to pursue this, is kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
So I've got a whole semester to decide that. But so that's
Mhm.
kind of where I'm at. And then I also just graduated with my master's.
Right.
And so that has actually opened up some doors within, the college area. And so I'm a part of this cohort that they're using us as research.
Mhm.
And it's opened up some doors to go and do research in other countries. I've also been invited to a conference in Portland coming up in February. And that's simply because my professor has kind of recognized my gifts and talents, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is, an awesome compliment, from
Mhm.
her. So that's been really cool. I'm really excited to see if this opens up any other doors, any other avenues. Because I'm at that point in my career. Essentially, I'm kind of halfway or just beyond halfway of my career.
Mhm.
And so I'm kind of looking forward to, like, what's next?
Mhm.
Where can I make a big impact? I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like I can continue to have impact on students, but I also think, okay, I've kind of done what I need to do here. Where can I have an impact here?
Yeah.
And how can I impact these teachers so that they can go and do awesome things here?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah. You graduated with your master's in curriculum, right?
Yeah, curriculum and instruction.
And instruction.
Yep.
So if I'm thinking, if you stay as a teacher in the classroom, that kind of, you're not putting that to use, right? Like all this hard work that you've done.
Uh,
I mean,
actually,
you
well,
are well.
so with this, a lot of it goes into like lesson design
Mhm.
and strategies and uh, creating curriculum, right?
Right.
And becoming better in my instruction. So I think that the degree that I have better translates into being a classroom teacher versus going into like administration, right? So there's a another master's program that you could get into that's admin and leadership, right? So the one that I went through would definitely help me as a classroom teacher,
Oh, okay.
but it will also help me in the instructional coach position, which I could potentially have next year. But ultimately, I would love to become a program director for all middle school science. That's my goal.
Hmm.
Or um, getting out of the educational system. And what I mean by that is like being tied to a district, like, some kind of educational consultant or something where I'm still having an impact, but on a broader scale, I guess.
Yeah. uh, so recently, there's been a lot of like distrust with like the media, and a lot of change with like curriculum that they're teaching in schools. With like a big topic is like gender and sex,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really polarized our entire nation.
Yeah.
Like, how do you feel about like all of that stuff? Like, do you think that like curriculum with science is like, let's say, like, putting aside your faith, do you think that science curriculum is like on a path that it shouldn't be on right now? or or do you think that like, I don't know, government has a lot to do with curriculum, right? Or like local government,
Yeah, on the
right?
state level.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
uh I think Texas is a lot more conservative, obviously, with their curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not much change. Well, I don't know if has there been a lot of change.
Not at the middle school level.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure if there has been at the high school level.
Hmm.
Um,
Or even elementary, right?
yeah, yeah, even elementary. But I've not heard anything,
Hmm.
to be honest.
Cause like on Twitter and like Instagram and stuff, like I've seen some like wild stuff of like elementary,
Yeah,
in
yeah.
like California and like Oregon, and I don't know, it's kind of scary.
Honestly, I think that there are a lot of things that are going in. Yeah, based on what I've heard and seen. I don't know what's true and what's just stories and what's made up.
Right.
But I think a lot of that is like, it's not the school's job, right?
Right.
Um, we definitely shouldn't be pushing anything onto the kids. Like, and honestly, like and I'm not trying to be hypocritical in all of that. So, like, I don't even think it's the school's job to say, oh, well, creationism is correct, that there is a God versus evolution. I mean, it's not the school's job to do that. I don't send my kid to school to get an education in faith, right?
Yeah.
Um, I definitely don't think it's our job to say, oh, well, there are more than two genders or there are only you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
I think we need to stay out of that
Yeah.
and let the parents do their job.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah. Uh,
But thank goodness it hasn't hasn't been an issue
Here.
that I've that here
Yeah.
that
You've
I've had
had
to
it.
experience or whatever,
Yeah.
because I honestly don't know what I would do.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
Yeah, that puts you in a tough spot.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I guess if it was something that I was really against, I mean, I guess I'd have to find something else to do.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I want to go back to talking about like God and
mhm.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
One question that I have a lot of interesting conversations about is when you think of God, do you give that God a gender? Like a lot of times we say, "Oh, he knows," or "he did this for a reason," right? So everybody kind of assumes that like God is like a
Mhm.
male.
Yeah.
I say like he or him or whatever because just like society has kind of made me do that, but I think that I think that like if there is a God, I think that that God is more of a let's say we give it a gender, I think it'd be more of a female, right?
Yeah.
Because because if you think about it, like a woman is what gives life, right? Like human life, right? Even with animals, like the most of the time it's the female organism giving that life. And if God created life, wouldn't that entity be more towards female?
That's. I mean, hey, that's deep, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've never really thought of it that way. No, I mean, I would have to disagree with you on that in the
Okay.
sense that, like I said, like
I
I
mean,
view the
do you
Bible.
even give it a gender?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay,
Him, he, right?
okay,
And because like I believe that the Bible is true, right?
okay, yeah,
And God is referred to as a him,
hmm,
he, um, Heavenly Father, right? Um,
but I thought that when people would say that, they were talking about Jesus, which is the human form
yeah. So,
of God.
man, that's one of those things where I think a lot of believers would say it's complex and it's hard to understand, hard to
Yeah.
wrap your mind around. So, as Christians, we believe there is one God,
Hmm.
right? One supreme being that exists in three persons: God the Father, God the Son, and God the Spirit. To wrap your mind around that is tough,
Yeah.
right? Um, so, and then Jesus, God the Son, is fully man, yet fully God. God incarnate, God in the form of man. So if you want to know what God, who we would say God the Father is, you would look at Jesus,
Hmm.
who you know um, is the physical presence of God, right? And and then when Jesus, God the Son, was crucified and rose from the dead, he eventually ascended into heaven to be in the presence of God the Father. One God, two beings,
Hmm.
right? And then as believers, we are filled with the Holy Spirit, God's Spirit, um, which is tough to really understand.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess I've just conceded to the fact that I'll try to understand it the best that I can, but I'm not gonna sit there and allow that to take me away from other things where I'm trying to figure it out, because it's
Hmm.
just one of those things where I don't think that we'll know until we get in the presence of God, right?
Hmm.
But yeah, so when we say Heavenly Father, that to me is God the Father,
Hmm.
and then Jesus is God the Son, and then you have God the Holy Spirit.
I gotcha.
But yeah, I would definitely say uh, God is He, Him.
Hmm.
Um, but I get where you're coming from when you're saying, who gives life here on earth? Well, it's the
Yeah.
females that do. But again, we've got to understand that we are not God. We're not anything like God in the sense that God is God.
Right.
And we are a creation,
Yeah, yeah.
a created being that he specifically set up the way that he did for whatever reason, for whatever purpose, right?
Mhm.
And it is what it is.
Yeah.
So,
It is what it is. Yeah. Um, has there been? I mean, I think there has been times where you've questioned God, right?
yeah, of course.
Yeah. Has there been a time where you like completely doubted everything?
Yeah, and even to this day, honestly, I'm curious if how many believers actually go through this and how many people would refuse to admit it. But I mean, even to this day, there are times when when I'm laying there in the middle of the night and can't sleep and I'm alone with my thoughts, right? I mean, that's one of the scariest times
Yeah.
of the day is when you're alone with your own thoughts, where I will begin to think about things, and I'm like, man, what if there is no such thing as God?
Mhm.
And it's kind of a scary thought because then it's like, okay, when that day comes and you're done for, you're just done for. And to try to imagine that there's nothing else like that, it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
But then I always go back to, okay, that's ridiculous because, again, if I look at a computer, there's obviously evidence of a designer,
Mhm.
and we are way more complex. I mean, and again, if you just go through everything, just the human body itself, right, is crazy.
Yeah.
Just how everything is set up. But then you think about the Earth and how we're tilted just right.
Yeah.
We're at the right distance from the sun. We're rotating at the right speed because if you increase it or slow it down, then things get all
Yeah.
wild and crazy.
And it's not just right, but it's perfect.
Yes. Yeah.
Like the show Sheldon, the
Young Sheldon.
young Sheldon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. One of the most compelling things that I've ever seen is where he's sitting with his mom, and she believes in God and stuff, and obviously Sheldon's a believer in science and
Yeah.
everything, and she's like having a hard time and she's crying, and I forget what she says to him, but then young Sheldon says, uh, the equation to gravity is perfect to the very last decimal. And if even one of those numbers was off, if there was a 2 instead of a 1 to the very last decimal point,
Yeah.
it would be completely thrown off.
Yeah.
So like it's obviously by design.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And then why do we have a moon?
Yeah.
Well, because it helps keep our wobble. I mean, because there is a slight wobble,
Mhm.
and from my understanding, it helps keep that wobble in check. Otherwise, we would,
Mhm.
And then
So you don't believe that the Earth is flat, right?
absolutely not.
That is like one of the craziest things ever, and like the fact that it's getting a lot of traction.
Yeah.
That's one of those things where it's kind of scary to think about.
Yeah,
That like,
and honestly, I feel like a lot of people do that because they want to jump on some kind of bandwagon
And
to
like-
kind of stand out.
we ran out of storage
Right.
on our microphones.
Hey, better to be out of storage than topics. Right?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. But I forgot what we were talking about. But yeah, just I just want to thank you for everything, and I really appreciate you for coming on and taking your time to sip some whiskey and
Absolutely.
have some dinner.
Yep.
I got to finally meet your family.
Yes,
I
sir.
really appreciate that. And just thank you. I appreciate you so much, dude.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you having me on. I mean, honestly, it's an honor to, for you to think of me as somebody that's been uh, somebody who's maybe inspired you or mentored. But um, again, as a teacher, it's it's a big compliment,
Hmm.
and I don't think you understand how big of a compliment that is. So um, I'm just glad to hear everything that you're doing, the impact that you've already made, and again, I hope that throughout all of this and just personal reflection and anything else that you do, recognize how awesome you really are, and that you've already had a big impact, more than you probably recognize, and you'll continue to do so. So, and I look forward to hearing more, you know, about the things that you do in the future.
Hmm. You'll definitely know.
I appreciate it.
And I plan on uh, doing more if you're up for it.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
uh, later down the road we could do another one.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll have a whole different setup. We could have a whole different setting.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I really appreciate those words, and it means a lot to me. You know, ever since the beginning,
Yeah.
ever since I was in your class and we would have those little conversations on the side, and then you took your time to take me out to lunch and let me be vulnerable with you, and really appreciate everything you've done for me.
Well, it honestly is an honor, and it's one of those things. Like I said, it's not necessarily about the science content that you learn.
Mhm.
It's that you've taken something from it and you're able to apply it to your life,
Mhm.
and uh, and so it's been cool to really honestly see the friendship that we've built.
Yeah,
Beyond that in later years.
yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah, I admire I admire you as a person, as a man, as a father, um, especially as a teacher.
I appreciate it, man.
Um, and you're one of those great men in my lives, in my life that I think about
Yeah.
all the time. Yeah, I
Well,
fucking love you.
I appreciate that, man. Come here, bring it in.
Thank you.